because they were
Mhm.
like,
Shit,
let's
the
get this
music.
party started, right?
This party
Play
started.
that thing, damn, right?
Funky. Funky. They also, it wasn't just Milli Vanilli. I think they also piped in vocals that were not Zelma Davis, I think was her name, but it was Martha Wash, better known as part of Two Tons of Fun.
All I know is Freedom was the man. So
Yeah.
this is the dome, back with the bass.
Uh,
All right,
we're so lucky.
you need CNC Championship and Championship Factory. That's what we're here for.
You got a team, here's a word to the wise. You want to dominate your league? Go to football, guys.
Football. I'm living in a fantasy. Football. Got everybody mad at me. Football. Cause every game I had to win. Football. I gotta be a champion. Football. I'm living in a fantasy.
And here we go, especially on Thursday night when it's Jets and Cleveland. Cleveland side, much more interesting, Bloom, but the Jets is who we're going to start with. And, well, it's against Cleveland. So this one's going to be a little tougher for Trevor Siemian and company.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We saw against Washington last week. Okay, that was Washington. They did something, but this is a little different. And we saw Case Keenum look pretty good against Tennessee. And then when he faced Cleveland, well, Davis Mills finished the game. So this could definitely be trouble for Trevor Siemian. Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson, especially Brees Hall, reasons that you got this far, you're going to play him. But you won't be surprised if they're a reason that you lose because, again, it's Cleveland's defense, the best defense in the league, and they're back in form. Maybe Ty Conklin is a what the heck tight end. I know with Cole Kmet and TJ Hawkinson hurt, a lot of people are looking for what the heck tight ends. Conklin's not a preferred guy, but he's on the list just because if they're going to struggle. I think we saw Dalton Schultz have 8 for 61 last week, some garbage time catches. So that might be a path there. But the path to the playoffs is clear for the Browns.
Yeah, the path to the playoffs and the path to your fantasy championship might just be Joe Flacco. Yeah, Joe Flacco. And we've had questions about Cooper, and everyone in the fantasy space had Cooper as that wide receiver 2 with upside. He broke all of our expectations. I don't think anyone out there should be breaking their arm, patting themselves on the back because, well, that's stupid. And 2, it's like that's kind of where Cooper's always at, is in the wide receiver 2 range. We crushed it. Yeah, Cooper crushed all of our expectations, every single one of us in the fantasy space. And, well, Bloom, it's one of those things like, well, if you did it once, we've gotten some questions. I've seen it on Twitter. It's like, yeah, baby, just roll with the hot hand. Roll with the hot hand, which includes Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper.
Yeah, and Flacco will throw into small windows. And yes, Sauce Gardner. And yes, the Jets defense, when they're on, are stifling as the Browns defense. But you're going to play David Njoku. A lot of people got to the finals on his back with his help. And of course, Amari Cooper. Probably not Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt. And Cecil, I think we can take a look back in week 17 always. And yes, Jerome Ford ended up being a pretty solid waiver wire pickup for you. But whenever Kareem Hunt was signed later that week, and there was a sense around the fantasy circles, it was pretty accurate as Hunt is getting the touchdowns. Ford not heavily involved. Maybe Elijah Moore revenge game. Maybe if you want to go deep in the desperation play bag because Joe Flacco will air it out and maybe it is Elijah Moore running under one of those deep balls. But I think that quietly and through a lot of turmoil, the Browns have been a success story this year. And like you said, Cease, they've helped a lot of fantasy teams be success stories.
Yeah, success stories on Saturday abound when we talk about the Lions and the Cowboys. I don't mind this Saturday game, Bloom, and I don't mind just one Saturday game. NFL, you're becoming too intrusive. And football every day. We were talking about the calendar next year, Bloom, and Christmas is what, on like a Wednesday or something?
Right.
And you were like, well, Roger Goodell, we get your Christmas game on Wednesday. Well, this Saturday game is going to be pretty damn good. Lions and Cowboys, let's get it on. And a lot of fantasy matchups will be relying on one of these two teams, starting with the Lions side. Who are you relying on Saturday night?
Yeah, the story's pretty straightforward. What's interesting about this game, of course, is we could see these teams play again in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, NFC title game. if Dallas is on track to be the 5 seed and Detroit the 2 seed. Now, some different things could happen. The Rams-San Francisco game looms pretty large here, but these two teams could see each other again. So, Cecil, you always talk about this. Is this a game where you don't show them everything? I think that for Ben Johnson, that is a legitimate question. I don't know that Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer have some part of the playbook that they've been holding back, as we've seen this offense really start to slow down after they came out of the bye really strong. Goff is a boom bust play, and you would think this game has big shootout potential. If you just look down the 16 games this week, and that shootout can determine fantasy championships, this is the game, Cease. Like you said, a lot of players we're going to count on here. Gibbs is in. He's the running back 1. Dave Montgomery is the running back 2. But remember what Buffalo did, speaking of play callers. Remember what Joe Brady did a few weeks back. Well, the run's working. We're going to keep running. Ben Johnson will do that. There's a way to not show them anything, Cease. If they can't stop the run, you don't have to show them anything but the run. So
right.
Dave Montgomery, don't overthink Dave Montgomery. You don't overthink Amon-Ra St. Brown. You don't overthink Sam Laporta. Now, I suppose we could get into some questions, and on the couch with Bob Harris later today, we're going to get at these tough questions. Like if you're tired of Travis Kelce letting you down, Sam Laporta is a player you might have drafted as his backup. I don't know that I would go Laporta over Kelce, but it could definitely work out for you because this offense is strong. And look, this team is going to probably face the Rams or Seattle. With the Rams, you have the Matt Stafford story. With Seattle, you have a team that has come into Detroit and won, I think, the last 2 years in a row in very tight, epic back-and-forth games. So Detroit, you made the playoffs. You won the championship. You're finally won the NFC North championship. You're finally hosting a playoff game at Ford Field. Finally, but still got to stay in top form if you don't want that to be their first playoff loss in Ford Field.
Stay on target. Stay on target. It's what the Cowboys are saying too, by the way. And the Jekyll and Hyde nature of the Cowboys. Although I do love the Dak Prescott memes that are floating around. I got a good friend of mine, Ollie, who is a big Cowboys fan. And he keeps sending me memes of like Dak Prescott hasn't thrown 4 interceptions and blah, 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 the Brock Purdy thing. Okay, I got you. But what did Dak and company do this week? Now, this one's at home, and not to sour Cowboys fans on our show. We love you all. But isn't this the type of game where Dallas could like whip their ass and then in the playoffs lose by double digits?
Right. It maybe even to the same Detroit Lions team that they whooped. We love all the fans of the 32 teams. You didn't choose your owner, Dallas Cowboys fans. We're not going to hold that against you. We might hold how this offense has been slowing down against our Cowboys options. Not all of them. I think Dak Prescott's in. I could certainly see, you mentioned Brock Purdy. I think Dak is in over Purdy. I think Dak is in over everybody except Hurts and Allen. I think Dak is in over Mahomes. I don't think that's a difficult call because it's Detroit, because of the shootout potential. You had 400-plus yards from Nick Mullins, who might not even start this week, last I heard. So Dak is in. Lamb, boy, that was one of the right answers. See, as we look at the end of the first round, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, a lot of teams that spent their first-round pick, nice, boring, late first-round pick, really worked out well for you over those running backs, over someone like Tony Pollard. This is a tough one, see. I mean, what has Tony Pollard done to make us fear benching him?
Nothing.
So if you're looking at me and saying, hey, Dante Foreman, if we hear that he's not going to play, I'm going to play Khalil Herbert over Mr. Pollard. Yeah. We didn't even get much out of the passing game with Pollard last week. Now, there is a shootout potential here, so it could backfire. Jake Ferguson has gotten into our circle of trust. Again, we're not forcing him in the lineup over someone like Travis Kelce, even though he could outscore Kelce. He has more than a few times in the second half of the year. Mostly you have Dallas on a collision course. Philadelphia, if they don't mess up, Dallas is on a collision course with Tampa. If Tampa doesn't mess up, and they thumped this Tampa team. But see, like you said, it's enough wild card wins over teams with losing records. They need to go deeper in the playoffs. This game's a good test.
The test bound in our next contest, and Bill Belichick went Lovie Smith last week because entering the game against the Broncos, the Patriots had the number 2 seed. Now they got the number 4 seed. So by Drake
in a
May.
three-player draft too.
Yeah, exactly.
Number 4 in a 3-player draft is not where you want to be.
That's not where you want to be. And well, Belichick got him there. What about this week against Buffalo? Is it possible? They're not facing the Broncos. They're facing a surging Bills team who, backs against the wall, man. That's what it's been. Let's talk Patriots side first. Less interesting side.
They beat the Bills earlier this year, 29-25. Mac Jones had a terrific game, and Bailey Zappi's been playing better. So maybe DeMario Douglas is a what-the-heck flex. Devontae Parker's desperation play. If Hunter Henry can get some practices in, we're looking at him. I think the easiest call here is probably Ezekiel Elliott as your running back 2 or flex, and it's the cheap, empty calories of PPR points. Lots of 3, 4, 5-yard receptions, maybe a touchdown. But he's got to be in just because Bailey Zappi knows how to check down. And this is an ultimate spoiler game. These teams know each other well. And even though they can't necessarily end the Bills' playoff hopes, if they win, the Patriots can end the Bills' hopes of winning the division for a 4th straight time. So these are all good things to get this team motivated. And like you said, Cecil, no lack of motivation. They basically controlled that game against the Broncos on Christmas Eve. What are we going to get for the Bills? Well, they almost lost to the Chargers, so we can't assume this is going to be easy.
Yeah, nothing's easy out there. And with the Buffalo Bills, okay, we know what you need to do. Now just keep doing it. Fantasy GMs know what they want. I still get a lot of Gabe Davis questions, Bloom.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this and how the Bills at home will best attack the Patriots. A very sound defense, a sound tackling defense, one that you can go through the air against, though. So let's talk about them.
Yeah, you would think based on the last few weeks, this is going to be that much more balanced Bills offense. I think that means don't overthink it with James Cook. I know he didn't score last week. I know he fumbled. But I think James Cook showed you the upside that he could be a championship winner for you. And he had a good game in the first matchup here. Can we bench Stephon Diggs? He hasn't done anything lately. He hasn't done anything to make us fear benching him. 6 for 58 and a touchdown in the first game. I'm going to break all ties in favor of Diggs. I'll be interested. I'll just be interested to see who is the other receiver that folks are weighing against Stephon Diggs. If it's Nico Collins with CJ Stroud back, there's some interesting questions I think we could get that I would say I'm not afraid of benching Diggs because of this balanced offense. In the first game, Dalton Kincaid had 8 for 75. It was kind of a breakout game for him. The tight ends have been marginalized. Like you said, Cecil, it's Gabe Davis coming in hot here. You only need one deep ball to hit for Gabe Davis to help you over the top. And since it came through for us last week, since they've established the run, you like the chances of that happening a little bit more. And you like the chances of, like you said, Cecil, maybe in the end, the Bills having their backs against the wall from week 12 on is the best thing that could have happened to them.
Yeah, focus. Focus. You guys are a lot better than you were playing earlier this year. Let's see him get to the Super Bowl, man.
Yeah.
That's where they're supposed to go. So, yeah, I'd love to see it. Some great playoff football abounds and non-playoff football in our next game. But this game could be interesting because this could be where Justin Fields goes. If they get the Chicago thing, it makes my head hurt, Bloom. Yeah. It's too early in the morning where it's like, are they going to keep him? Are they going to, Atlanta, maybe? I don't know. But it's Atlanta versus Chicago. And Atlanta, speaking of making your head hurt, well, that'll make your head hurt. YOLO ball with Taylor Heineke. But again, this game's interesting to me because this might be where Justin Fields ends up going if the Bears get rid of him. But who knows if he plays well over the last 2 games? They might not, but then they might. But who knows? But let's talk about the Falcons first. So there's more frustration there.
Yeah, and they're not out of the playoff hunt. Again, 7-8 is still in it, in the division, in the playoff hunt. And if you're in it with Falcons, well, you got some good breaks because this has been a very difficult fantasy offense to project every week. And with Taylor Heineke, we saw a lot of safe passing. A lot of passing to the tight ends, a lot of passing to Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson's back in our circle of trust. Arthur Smith looks like he's willing to go back to him. I would think in this game against Chicago's not going to run away from Atlanta. It should be a Bijan Robinson game. Drake London has shown us the ceiling. I understand that if everything goes as planned for Atlanta, Drake London might have another 3 for 39 game. But that's his floor. That's a floor game. Even though Taylor Heineke's not airing it out, we know that Drake London can take over this game. Kyle Pitts, not so much. And again, he's rewinding. It was a salary dump, right? Jonnu Smith was Bill Belichick's big splash, first signing in free agency when they got Smith and Aguilar and Hunter Henry, and they were going to remake this offense. And then they traded him for a seventh round, the classic late round conditional pick. Well, if you had Kyle Pitts and you thought, oh man, really, Jonnu Smith? You were right. That was the limiting factor. That's going to be a limiting factor again. Taylor Heineke's looking for Jonnu Smith as much as he's looking for Kyle Pitts. So here we are, Kyle Pitts, far from a must play, and maybe somebody you leave on the bench because this Bears defense has been playing better.
Well, like you said, if you made it here with Falcons, then I want to see the rest of your roster. Yeah. I got Kyle Pitts as my tight end. Well, who the hell else you got? Because Pitts hasn't been helping you much. Bears side, again, frustration. Justin Fields there, though, at home. We know what he can do. The backfield, frustration. And then DJ Moore makes me happy, Bloom. I suppose we could talk about that.
Yeah, and I get how you just can't bench DJ Moore. I'm going to be watching the practice reports. This is one of the situations, how often do we see someone suffer an ankle injury during the game, play through it, but then be in worse shape the following week than they were when they played through the injury? So that's going to be tough. And you got A.J. Terrell and the Falcons, again, still playing for a playoff spot here. Terrell should follow DJ Moore. I'm not saying to bench DJ Moore. I am saying that if he has another 3 for 16 kind of line, that shouldn't surprise us. Don't think we're going to see Cole Kmet, both Kmet and Hawkinson going out with those low hits. And, well, you might say the league has legislated players, defensive players, into doing that. And it's going to force more tough decisions. And it's going to force a tougher decision for Cole Kmet, because outside of rushing for 150 yards, and Justin Fields can do it, all right? If we were going to say, which quarterback in week 17 is most likely to win your week strictly as a runner? It doesn't even matter what he does as a passer. That's Justin Fields. Well, what is he going to do as a passer without Kmet, with a hobbled DJ Moore? Darnell Mooney hasn't been the same. Tyler Scott, I mean, this is a game where you went in with Fields maybe thinking he's my quarterback for the fantasy playoffs. But now, if DJ Moore is not 100%, if Cole Kmet's not out there, I wonder, because these two coaches, I think, would be content to play a 10-7, Greco-Roman wrestling, clinch in the middle of the ring, make the ref break you apart, last field goal wins kind of game.
Yeah, speaking of clinch, both these two coaches, they'll be clinched and being like, oh, we don't want to score. What are we doing here? Yeah. 4 games down, 4 games to go. Hot sphincter talk. Sorry, Joe. It is the Audible. It's week 17 preview fantasy championship time. We're glad you're here with us. Even if you didn't make it, you just want to hear some football talk. We appreciate you all for that. We'll remind you that we don't go away. We're going to be here throughout the entire offseason, of course, Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, and it'll be 18 years in a row for me. Again, got about 3 years left. Gonna get to 20 and then see where I'm at. But we'll keep you up to date. All of these players that we're talking about, most of them we saw on that all-star road trip, whether it was last year or back in the day or whatever. So and this year with the Junior Senior Bowl, it's going to be the most jam-packed
Thank you for
collection of talent.
The song.
Yeah, I do. I do have to listen to the song. Just send it to me, baby. Just text me. We're going to keep you up to date. We'll have a Black Monday show when all the coaching changes are made, free agency updates. We don't go anywhere. So please help us out on our YouTube channel. Like, comment, and share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid, as roughly about 40% of our viewers that watch aren't subscribed. What are you doing? It's free. Click the thing.
Cecil, if I can interject, you've been going, and I was there in the early years with you. You've been going to the Shrine Game and Senior Bowl for so long. It's not just players. Some of the head coaches you watched in these games.
Yeah.
So wait long enough, maybe it'll be a team owner. I don't know. But and folks, I want to just piggyback on what C said. Tell us how we can help you. We take a little bit of a breather in the off season, but we're here to serve you. We wouldn't be here without you. And if there's anything we can do to serve you better in the off season, we like hanging out with each other. We like hanging out with you. And if there's some things we can do to give us an excuse to hang out, give us that excuse.
Yeah, even if it's talking about the Raiders and the Colts, but this one's a little hotter because of what the Raiders have been doing. Now we're waiting. I had a question in the chat room a little bit earlier about Zamir White. Like, we're waiting to see the status of Josh Jacobs. If you're listening to this show, it's Wednesday morning, so we don't yet know. But obviously that would change some things. Is Aiden O'Connell going to pass for 100 yards? You're not relying on him, but you are relying on Devontae Adams, perhaps. So, yeah, that'll be different. And then, of course, the Raiders defense, coming through, scoop and score, pick and six. Like, yeah, man. So let's talk the Raiders side. It might be a little more interesting than just Zamir White.
Yeah, and Zamir White is a flex play if Josh Jacobs is out. We're just going to watch this one. I don't know if it was the illness that changed his status where it looked like he was trending to play, or maybe he had a setback.
They said it was his quad, so I don't know if that's really what it was or what.
Right, and if it is the quad, if it is that his injury wasn't responding well, then that gives us a more likely Zamir White start here. Of course, Devontae Adams is in. I know he didn't do much for you last week, but this is an indoor game. This is the Colts and their young, inexperienced secondary. Jacoby Myers becomes a what-the-heck flex. Aiden O'Connell, maybe a little shakier quarterback to super flex type. That being said, we did see Taylor Heineke have reasonable amount of success in the safe passing game plan against these Colts last week. And I think if we're going to talk about the Raiders, Cease, let's talk a little bit about Antonio Pierce. I really hope that Mark Davis keeps him. And Cease, there's a layer to football that can sometimes be painful, where we see players stick around for a couple of years too long. I mean, from our point of view, right? They're not the same player anymore. They're not contributing as much. Maybe they have released midseason and have to catch on somewhere else. They're staying in shape, hoping see how many hundreds of players today are waiting for that phone to ring, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Why keep putting yourself through that? Why? Well, I think you see with Antonio Pierce, and we talk a lot about the family element of football, that these teams are families. And all that comes with family. I know for everybody, the word family brings up any number of associations. But I think you can see that truly this team is playing for Antonio Pierce. And he loves and he's putting himself on the line for his team. And these improbable wins, whether it's 63 points or winning against the Chiefs when they have nothing going on offense whatsoever against Patrick Mahomes. I think it's the connection between the players and just how striking of a change. Let this be something that goes in the textbook for owners, for GMs. How different this team has been without Josh McDaniels and his glowering negative presence, one that you documented. Again, Cease, how many years ago was it now? 12, 13 years ago that you were telling people, maybe that's when some of the Lassie bark started, right? You couldn't talk too freely about what was going on with Josh McDaniels, but you saw it every day, and you see what removing that and bringing in a coach who cares about the players, how that changes a team. And I hope the Raiders can keep this up and Pierce can get the interim removed from his title.
Yeah, you love to see it. You love to see the response there as well. It was about 10 to 12 years ago when I saw Josh McDaniels cussing at the landscapers in Spanish. And I was like, wow, you're going bilingual to being aloha.
Yeah.
You're bilingual. That's awesome. You're cussing them out. You're a jerk, Josh McDaniels. Anyway, let's talk about the Colts side. Oh, see, now I'm tempted to say some cuss words in Spanish, but I was like, he'd probably, hey, Google Translator, what does this mean? I don't even want to say what I was going to say.
We need another shirt. Cease. Lo siento, Jose.
That's right. Por qué? No, I won't even say it. Anyway, yeah, Colts side. Let's get my mind out of the gutter, Bloom. Let's talk about Gardner Minshew and that beautiful hair. And, well, I guess we'll watch Zach Moss's injury report. Does it impact Jonathan Taylor at all whatsoever? Probably not. But again, Wednesday morning, so we're left to wonder what their backfield's going to look like, how much Moss would be out there if he's able to play. And the Colts at home will have a larger fight on their hands.
Yeah, at home and still in control of their playoff hopes, basically. If they win out, there's a good chance that they're going to go to the playoffs. Quite a season for the Colts. There was a season before the season with this team. Huge range of outcomes. It is going to all ride on Jonathan Taylor, which is fitting, as so many of the stories about this team revolved around Taylor and Anthony Richardson early in the season. Is Michael Pittman going to play? That's a big story in this one. You really saw Gardner Minshew struggle, not against the Steelers, but last week against the Falcons, struggle without Pittman. And that would take away a lot of his appeal as a quarterback 2 super flex if Pittman can't go. If Pittman can go, of course, Pittman's in your lineup and Minshew becomes a little better play for those super flex teams. And we'll see. I think that this is a game for the Colts where they frankly haven't looked like a playoff team. They didn't look like a playoff team last week by a large margin, but this has been a mercurial team as opposed to the Raiders, where we know we're going to get a team that's going to leave everything out there, even if they have a talent gap with their opponents.
Talent gap perfectly sums up this game because it's Rams and it's Giants. Woo! Oh my goodness. Okay, Rams side. You got here because of Kyren Williams. You got here because of Puka Nacua. You might have gotten here because of Matthew Stafford, maybe even Cooper Kupp at the times he was healthy and playing. So, robust day. I know it's across the country, Bloom. Is weather going to be a factor this week? I don't know. What
Early indications are no. Indications are no.
Okay, that's helpful for your Rams this week against the Giants. Let's talk about Stafford and company.
Yeah, Stafford looking great. And I've got to say, whether it's Stafford or McVay or Aaron Donald, all the talk of retirement and they won the Super Bowl and where's the motivation come and they need to rebuild, not rebuilding, retooling their way to the playoffs if they can win this game and then maybe play spoiler for San Francisco's seeding next week. This team is going to be a tough out because they have that veteran quarterback, and Matthew Stafford absolutely could be in your lineup. Giants defense has been up and down, but I think that we saw Matthew Stafford riffing with all of his weapons last week. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Demarcus Robinson. We got the question in the chat room about Demarcus Robinson.
I saw that.
He's got 4 straight weeks with a touchdown. Tutu Atwell was back last week from his concussion and played just a handful of snaps. Robinson's the number 3, and Robinson has been a target, especially in the red zone, that Matthew Stafford's looking for. So I'm not going to talk you out of that. Puka Nacua and Kyren Williams. See, how many times did we have to hear about back in the day, like Frisman Jackson, right? The week 1 wonders. Don't blow all your money on the week 1 waiver wire pickup because that's what that's not what fools do. Fools say, I'm not going to spend all my money on Puka or Kyren because better things are coming. There weren't better things coming on the waiver wire this year. And yeah, a lot of teams with Puka, a lot of teams with Kyren, and see those big field contests, high stakes leagues, best ball contests where $100,000 or $1 million on the line. A lot of the teams that are sweating it out are teams that just a seemingly insignificant pick late. Well, Puka Nacua is getting some buzz. Kyren Williams is getting some buzz. And I'm going to say a nod to Jordan Rodriguez, who at every step of the way was telling us they are giving Puka Nacua so much work that it's clear they have plans for him. And they like Kyren Williams. We heard over and over again, they like Kyren Williams. So don't tell me that preseason doesn't matter. Don't tell me that reports out of camp and OTAs don't matter, because if you were paying attention, it planted the seeds to make you more confident to spend 75% of your budget on Nacua or 40-50% of your budget on Kyren Williams, because you knew these were continuations of a storyline. Another quick storyline, Davis Maddox was on talking about short kings. Running back is a short king position this year. None of the leading rushers at running back are your classic big backs. And I think with Kyren Williams, he's, even for someone like myself, I was skeptical because he's a 5'9", 190-ish pound back with no special physical qualities. But that goes to Sean McVay, to Matthew Stafford, to the quality of this offense, to the way this offense, like a Kyle Shanahan offense, creates production as long as you're competent. Kyren Williams is very competent, and good news, the Giants are starting a competent quarterback this week.
Yeah. Would it surprise me if Kyren Williams was Olandis Gary? Not at all, because it's the Shanahan system. Would it surprise me if he was Clinton Portis? No, not at all. Not at all. But if you're competent, you're going to be productive in that system. And yeah, credit to Jordan. Anyone who's like, you guys got me on Puka Nacua. You know what we're doing? Paying attention to the news.
Yeah.
And you know what the news was in May and June and July and in August when I saw the Rams and I told someone, I'll tell you off air who it was because they're a fantasy analyst, who was talking about Van Jefferson. I was like, Van Jefferson sucks. I was like, Puka Nacua. I said, Puka Nacua is a guy everybody's talking about. So I thought that was a funny exchange. Anyway.
Yeah.
The Giants side, I'm offended. Let's talk about Tyrod, maybe.
Yeah.
Do we know Wednesday? Is it
Yes,
going to be
official.
Tyrod? It is
Yes.
officially official. Tyrod Taylor in, and the Giants seem to perk up.
Yeah.
When Tyrod was in there. So DeVito, great story, not a great quarterback. Tyrod might make himself some money in these last couple games.
Yeah, good enough. He should start somewhere next year. And
Yeah.
for fantasy, he's a quarterback 2 super flex. It makes it a lot easier to play Saquon Barkley. If you're looking for a desperation play, a Darius Slayton, maybe even a Wan'Dale Robinson. If you're looking for a tight end to replace Cole Kmet or TJ Hawkinson, or you're just not sure about your tight end and Darren Waller is one of them, you're more interested in Darren Waller. Certainly, Saints fans are rooting against the Rams after the Saints couldn't take care of business against them last week. Playoff implications. You're happy if you're a Saints fan. You're happy if you're a fan of one of these 7 and 8 teams that needs the Rams to lose this week, as Tyrod will make this work for this offense. And yeah, I think for fantasy, that's some of the best news we've gotten so far this week.
That is great news there. What's the news at Arizona? I feel like we could ask that a lot, right? Arizona side, Arizona and Philadelphia is this one. And well, Eagles just take care of business at home, but Arizona, like, okay, Trey McBride and Trey McBride. I don't know. Fantasy championship. Not a lot of Cardinals going to be in my lineups.
Probably not. I think there is some quarterback 2 super flex, or maybe even an upside streamer. If you're looking at your quarterback options and you need 30 points out of your quarterback to have a chance, you need to neutralize, the other half of this matchup, Jalen Hurts. Kyler Murray might do that. Now, last week, he only got his production when the game was mostly out of hand. Certainly, the Bears controlled that game from start to finish. You haven't seen him click in Drew Petzing's offense yet. So you wonder internally what the conversations are. Again, the 2 biggest stories this offseason are Kyler Murray and Justin Fields. What happens with these guys?
Right.
And I think that we may see other teams wait until those situations are determined. And we're going to see a lot of teams with new head coaches. We're going to see a lot of teams with new quarterbacks, some of the times both. James Conner needs to be in. That's the other guy, Cecil. He did enough as a receiver last week, 5 for 67 and a touchdown, just as a receiver, still running well. And Philadelphia's defense, problemos, because, that guy that coached their defense last year is coaching this team, this Arizona team. You think he might have some insight on how to play spoiler in this one. Remember, Philadelphia still trying to bring home the division. They're going to know what Dallas did against Detroit, but there are some implications here. Hollywood Brown could be back. If he's back, we saw him play and leave with a heel injury very promptly. So he's truly a desperation play, but one that could come through is, again, if there's a story for the Cardinals, Cease, it's that Jonathan Gannon was a good hire, and we all laughed at that hire. He was a good hire. He's still a very good defensive coach. I think you can look at his absence in Philadelphia. You can see this Arizona team. Cease, what was the expectation for the Arizona? Just don't be the worst team. Don't be the team that has the number 1 in whatever Houston's pick is. And they've been able to do that. And I think that, again, mentioning Drew Petzing and what they did with Joshua Dobbs, this was a team with a quarterback in week 1 who didn't even know the names of some of his teammates. They've done enough to feel like they got the hire right. Now they need to get this Kyler Murray decision right. And if Murray can pull off this upset, it could complicate that decision.
Well, Bloom, as my mind wanders, so everyone forgive me, but I want to talk about football. You don't need the hot offensive guru.
No.
Okay. We just talked about Antonio Pierce. We're talking about Gannon right now. Like, you need the right guy.
Right.
So it's nice. Coaches want offensive, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And how many of those guys turn out to not be great head coaches, fine offensive coordinators or whatever? So it's like, yeah, it may be a hire we make fun of and then have to eat some crow or humble pie. Can humble pie be crow? Can it be crow pie? I don't know. Somewhere Matt Waldman's offended because I'm talking about eating crow. But
right, that's an intelligent bird there. Maybe to make you smarter, brain food. Yeah. And sees the two definitive signature coaches of this era, of the Audible era, are defensive head coaches, Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick.
Yep. Been doing this show for 18 years. Tweets are for Yoda says, discovered y'all mid-season and enjoyed your quirkiness. Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll take that.
We're just different. The blessing that we have, Bloom, we'll get to the Eagles eventually, baby. But the blessing we have is Joe lets us just do our show.
Yeah. That's a lot of Joe.
That's a lot of that. And there's a lot of comfort in that because, like, I understand, obviously the talk show world and sports media world that I live in, but it's like, I just want to be me, man.
Yeah.
I want you to be you, Bloom.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, I went to the Newhouse School for a year and a half before I dropped out of the broadcast journalism program. You have certainly done your share of tours of duty in the radio world. And there is a mass media world or a philosophy of media personalities. And this is what drove me out of the Newhouse School, where everybody's trying to blend into one formless, nameless person. You make your accent go away. You make your vocabulary go away. Your look even is a special, clean TV look. You're dressing for the job that you want, sitting behind some desk somewhere, reading a teleprompter. And everybody's trying to become the same. And I think that we stand for, whether it's in sports media or any other walk of life, being yourself and being more like yourself, because that's your special gift that you have to contribute to the world, not something where you try to iron out everything that makes you different and quirky and blend in. That's the last thing we want to do here.
Yeah, exactly. The Eagles don't blend in. There's a segue, Bloom, because of what they do offensively. And yeah, it's a bit of a high school offense. I don't know who said that. Did you say that, Bloom? Somebody said that. When they're like, the Eagles are running high school
plays over and over again.
Yeah. Hey, it works most of the time. So yeah, keep it out there and working at home against the Cardinals. Be a nice day to have your Eagles in your lineup, Bloom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing we should count on this week is a lot of offensive success for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, all three of those targets were good plays in the win over the Giants. Should happen again, or at least if one of them's not, then one of them's going to be a massive play. And I think you're going to go with DeAndre Swift here. We saw Khalil Herbert run for over 100 yards last week. We saw DeAndre Swift has best fantasy game in months last week against the Giants. So I think that this is a game where DeAndre Swift should get a lot of work, especially in the second half. And again, the Eagles win their last two games. They, I believe, play the Giants again in Week 18. And the Rams can pull off a win against San Francisco. And we know, hey, McVay, Shanahan, you put those two together, it's going to come down to a call. It's going to come down to a balance. It's going to come down to one play. So Philadelphia is still very much in it for the number one seed. They just have to take care of business in this game.
I love hearing your stories, but when it's like this, Donovan, I lost my semis by 0.1 points.
Yeah. Well, and our man Jimmy Evans won by one because he was facing Brock Purdy. So Mike McDonald, the Ravens, getting those coordinator hires right. The Ravens and Mike McDonald bringing home one for our man Jimmy.
I like it. One more game before we're out of here today. Of course, have part 2 tomorrow coming up at 11 a.m. Eastern time. New Orleans Saints versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Saints are on the road, and we're getting some Derek Carr questions. But Derek Carr is so God-blessed inconsistent, Bloom. I always hesitate when recommending Derek Carr over pretty much anyone. Because I think, didn't we get a Carr versus Flacco? Was it an email? I don't know if I've answered that. I'm sorry. I'll get back to you. But like, I think it was a Carr or Flacco. And I'm like, I know Flacco's got Thursday night of Jets, whatever. But I'm like, I just don't trust Derek Carr. Maybe I should this week, although it's against Tampa and it's on the road.
Yeah, I'll brighten it up. Because Tampa is been a good matchup for opposing quarterbacks. Also brighten it up and say that Carr has, I think, 8 passing touchdowns over the last 3 weeks, missing Chris Olave for part of that stretch. So you look at what Carr has now with Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Juwan Johnson, of course, Alvin Kamara as a receiver, and the Saints playing for their lives. Basically, if the Saints lose, their season is over. So you hope that causes some urgency. Let me tell you, Cease, in New Orleans Instagram, just because everyone tries to have a sense of humor, the most popular New Orleans Instagram I saw was the crying kid opening up the box on Christmas morning, and it's a Derek Carr jersey, so maybe that's how you feel if Carr's in your fantasy lineup, but I think he's going to be fine. I think that Rashid Shaheed's a what the heck flex this week. Juwan Johnson, again, you're looking for the Komet Hawkinson coverage, and Alvin Kamara, not as good last week. If you made it through in spite of him. But at the same time, if this turns into a high-scoring game, he's not going to do a lot as a runner, could do more as a receiver, could score. Taysom Hill, that was fun. Remember when Taysom Hill was a fantasy stud for about 3 weeks? Probably not going with him. He's not one of your preferred replacements. Watch him score 3 touchdowns this week. And watch the Saints try to keep their playoff hopes alive, and watch the Buccaneers in Week 17 with still a week to go with a chance to clinch the division.
Yeah, way to go, Baker the Baby Maker. Irie-ish. Stay Irie, man, says Baker Gino or Goff. I like it, but let's talk about Baker the Baby Maker and the weapons that abound. And yeah, you may have gotten here because of Rachaad White.
Mm-hmm.
So this week against the Saints, you got plenty of options if they've got Buccaneers helmets on.
Yeah, one of the right answers, and Cecil, I'll do my What We Learned article sometime in January. But I think one of the things that you're going to come out of this year, if you went into your fantasy draft and you just said, not just 0 running back, do the opposite, upside down drafting, but just from a strategy standpoint said, everybody is undervaluing touches by default for running backs. And we hate touches by default, right? The running backs that get touches by default, we say, well, they're only there because there's not a better option, and those guys always underperform, and they fall to the bottom of their tier. James Conner, Rachaad White, Raheem Mostert. Okay, hey, Raheem Mostert was the lead back for the Dolphins going into fantasy draft season. Even Kyron Williams was a touches by default guy in the sense that you're saying, well, the Rams have to give the ball to somebody other than Cam Akers sometimes. So let's keep that in mind, file that away as Rachaad White, absolutely one of the right answers. And what do I love to say? A lot of things. I just love to hear myself talk. But in fantasy football, you can be right for the right reasons and wrong for the right reasons in the same season, in the same month, maybe even in the same game. And he said, Rachaad White is not a good runner. He's not disciplined. He's only the starter by default. And the team is going to want to look to other options. You were right. But none of the other options were any good either. So he kept getting more opportunities, and he eventually got in a groove and got your fantasy team in a groove here. In the first matchup, Baker Mayfield had 3 touchdown passes, none of them to Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. Marshawn Lattimore is playing in that game. He's not going to be in this one, so you're not as worried about Evans. Godwin looking a little better. He's come on over the last 3 weeks. Cade Otton had a touchdown in that game. If you're really looking deep into what the heck tight end, you're looking for a Komet or Hawkinson coverage. But I think, in this matchup, I think Baker's probably a better play than Carr. I do think this could turn into a hot quarterback duel. And if we're looking for a shootout that's not Detroit and Dallas on the Week 16 slate, this could be it.
Could be it. Could be a wrap for today's program. Look, Bloom, you got him. You got him, because Ogie says, nice to watch live. I'm normally pod. You've said it. You said, come to YouTube. See Bloom skydiving during the show.
Right? We've seen Cecil has been known to do the show shirtless. When I'm back in New Orleans, you might get a cameo appearance from our urban legend Cat. You never know. I think that what's fun about it is it's real life unfolding, especially since the pandemic, and there was just a proliferation of people consuming YouTube channels, podcasts, things like that. This goes back to what we were talking about with broadcast personalities. It doesn't need to be clean. Doesn't need to be perfect. Doesn't need
Mm-hmm.
to be a spotless audio and video with track with everything controlled, because that's not life. That's not real. We're real.
I think.
You know, you're not actually touching your face. Those are the molecules, the
Right.
atoms in your finger and your face. You never actually smell anything. You never actually see anything. You never actually touch anything. You never
Mhm.
actually taste anything. But you might win a fantasy football championship.
And that's what matters. That's why we are here for you. He's Sigmund Bloom at Sigmund Bloom on Twitter. I'm at Cecil Lammey. The show's at the Audible. Growing the YouTube channel, so help us out. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid, and we appreciate you very much for that. He's Sig. I'm Cease. We are the Audible. Everyone out there, thanks for watching. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.